Charlie. Mark, 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze.
T-minus 37 seconds.
Fight with growing
E
confidence.
equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Ignition sequence.
Tear down this
Something's happening. Coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spenard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
And welcome to Finding Your Frequency. I am Jeff Spenard. I'm your host. I'm the CEO and president of World Talk Radio, home to the Voice America Talk Radio and TV networks. Joining me, my special co-host, TV program director, Mr. Jon Missel. John, back on the show.
Always fun to be here, Jeff. Always fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we're coming off a little technical difficulties from last week. We had a flood that came pouring through the engineer room, and we had to pull all of the equipment out. It was a nightmare.
Oh, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Our hallway lined with mixing boards and computers.
Yep.
And
Yep.
But the staff did a great job getting it back together.
Let me tell you something. I got a call at like 5:30 at home saying, listen, you got to get to the office. None of us are close enough to assess the damage and see what's going on over there, because everybody was freaking out. So when I got here, there was seven people here. My network director with her shoes off, running around barefoot, and a bunch of other people, and they're pulling all the equipment out of the room because it just flooded out. So great job. Kudos for them even being here at that hour. Normally we're pretty much empty. But great job. By Saturday, we were back up and running, pieced a couple of things together, but for the most part, we are at 99.9% healed. So great job to the Voice America crew.
And that one Band-Aid for the other 1% when we get there.
Yes. And I'll give kudos to Ryan, my co-host, who is not with us today. He did, of course, project manage the whole process of getting us back together, and of course, hands-on. And a special thanks to Aaron too, who spent all day, with the air guns and pulling all equipment apart. It was just a collaborated effort that we got back and healthy real quick. So awesome.
And a small thank you to living in Arizona with the sun gods helping us dry out.
Yeah, right. The sun gods who also bring the monsoons. All right. Well, last week, or the last show, we had Mr. Evan Disney on and Kaya Redford. Evan was the magician, which, John, I know you have a special love for magic.
Always. Spent a lot of years doing that myself and still play around a little bit. It's always great to have those kind of people on
Absolutely.
the show. They're just, and especially they're so talented nowadays.
Yeah, and it's a great story. He came out from, I don't know, it was Kentucky or one of those states, mid somewhere. But he moved to L.A. so that he could pursue his magic career and, turn that into something where now he's in the speaking circuit as well. So he's using his magic and using it as doing something good for humanity. So, God bless Evan Disney, and wish him much success. Kaya Redford was our other guest, who is a serial entrepreneur, and he's also on the speaking circuit, helping people with business, just, how to build, how to promote, how to create, and adding to business. So, a lot of good. If you guys missed the show last week, not last Friday, but the Friday before that, go to Finding Your Frequency host page, go to Finding Your Frequency net. You can listen to any show we've ever done. So But Kaya was a great interview as well.
Oh yeah, there's quite a difference in my mind about serial entrepreneurs and regular entrepreneurs. And when I say that, somebody that's an entrepreneur and they keep in one business only,
Right.
a serial entrepreneur that has so much energy. You know what they say: if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Whereas somebody juggling 5, 6 different projects at the same time and making them all successful. It's awesome.
Yep. So kudos to Kaya, and that will lead me into a new product. Okay, this is something that I am getting involved with, so you guys can see this. This is the Hilo. It's a technology. Yes, it's an accessory, accessory that tells you your body temperature. It let me see, what do we got? We have breath rate, mood, energy, steps, sleep. It's got a Guardian system, remote monitoring, SOS function, and there's a lot of plugins, and the technology is only getting better. There's 2 things that will always enhance and be a success, which is technology and health. Okay, when you merge the 2 together, it's something that you guys will learn much more about this. I just got this yesterday, so once I have everything usable and learn more about the functionality, we'll be bringing it to you. So, pay attention for that to come. John?
Well, and I was just going to say the nice thing about it is when you combine technology and you combine health, all you do is help humanity and make it even better.
Absolutely.
And give people longer lifespans. But
yeah.
While we're doing product placement things today, I'd like to do this.
To slow down. As far as the future of this, I mean, it's a great product, but the key and what I liked about it was not only the functionality, because I've got diabetes, I have to watch certain things on my own, but you can get a family pack. For example, my mother is 68 years old. I got her one of these, and I got 2 more, one for both my brothers. We can all be on the app and find out and look at how we all are doing. And
nice.
if my mother falls down, or heck, if I fall down and nobody's around, I can hit my security button, and it will alert everybody in my circle.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's, moving forward. So, again, you'll learn more about this product as we go along. So, John, back to product placement.
No, wait a minute. You got to add one more thing about that.
No, tell me.
It's comfortable to put on. It's not a bulky, a
absolutely.
$9,000 watch.
It's beautiful.
Okay, now we'll go to my product placement. This is for years and years and decades of drinking
jackass.
Coca-Cola. Okay, and I just wanted to shout out to Coca-Cola here. Thank you so much for rotting my stomach out.
They needed your plug.
Yeah, they needed that from me.
All right. Without further ado, let's bring in our first guest, who happens to be sitting with us, Mr. Kevin Gassman. Kevin Gassman started off his extraordinary rise in broadcasting at ESPN 860 and KTAR. Mr. Gassman moved on to stations like News Talk 1010, mornings on All Comedy Radio 1480, KWSS 93.9 FM, FX 99.1 FM, Alternative Rock. Mr. Gassman has nearly 2 decades as a technical director, producer, show host in the future of broadcasting as we know it. Oh, that's nice there, buddy. Hosted hockey shows, comedy, sports shows, and morning shows. Mr. Gassman performs stand-up comedy and regularly performs on stage since 2008. You've probably seen him at venues like the Tempe Improv and Stand Up Live in downtown Phoenix. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Mr. Kevin Gassman.
I want to meet him too, man. He seems pretty cool.
That's fantastic.
What's up? How you doing?
Doing excellent.
Before we get started, John, I had no idea you did magic, but that does explain the ponytail.
Yes.
Right.
Many years.
He's got the look of a magician.
Yeah, he does.
Can you disappear?
Yes, right now. Thanks for having me.
If you're gone, right. All right. So actually, you know what? First off, what I want to know, Kevin, I've known you for a few years now. You've worked with the company for a few years, but let's go back in history a little bit. Talk to us about, how you came into your radio career, and now we're talking about a radio show, and we'll get into that after. But tell us about your journey.
Yeah, right on. Well, I grew up in Southern California, in Los Angeles area, Northridge to be exact. It became famous due to the earthquake in '94. I missed it by a week, by the way.
Did you? Nice,
I did. By 1 week, I missed it. And I just grew up listening to radio. It was just one of those things, it was the early '80s, and you're even the late '70s. There was, you're in LA. You're dealing with the best of the best.
Right.
I mean, this is what you're growing up with. So it was Fraser Smith. It was Mark and Brian in the morning. Who's Thomas, the guy that he was a morning guy on Power Radio there. He also did on Cheers. He's an actor as well.
Okay.
I forgot his name anyway, but he was
famous actor, huh?
He was Carla's husband or something like that. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, he was a morning guy, big name, big. Radio was a big thing back then.
Sure.
I think it's definitely lost a lot of its oomph lately, but that's another story. However, growing up there, you just listened to it, and that's what it was. But I didn't want to be on the radio, per se.
Right.
I just liked it. Every Sunday night, I listened to KLOS. It was Bob Coburn, BC.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he passed away a little recently. And, I just really dug his demeanor. When I listened to it, it just wasn't really what he was talking about. It was how he was talking.
Sure.
It was just really laid back. It was really cool. Took his time. And that left an impression on me.
Sure.
But then on the other end, I'm listening to Dr. Demento every Sunday night, and that was a big influence on me. All that stuff was. So as I was growing up, that was always in the back of my mind of listening to radio and that'd be kind of fun to do it, but never really thought about it.
Right.
I grew up going to, learning golf. I had a best friend of mine who we just golfed like 3 or 4 times a week.
Right.
And
I never would have thought that.
Yeah, nobody really does. He's actually a pro golfer. He's an assistant to the head pro at a golf course out in I think New Orleans right now. He was in Chicago for a while. Mm-hmm. We're assistant to the head pro at a private course. This guy has really made a name for himself up there, which is great. Played in the PGA Tour. This is my friend. And we were going to go to college together. We were going to go to New Mexico State University, and we were going to learn professional golf management, the PGM program. Only 3 schools offered that. One was in Michigan, one was in Mississippi, and then the one was in New Mexico.
Right.
Being from LA, New Mexico was the obvious choice. So I made it out there. My friend didn't. And so I'm like, well, screw you. I'm going to go anyway. So I went out there and took the courses for professional golf management. At that time, my handicap was right at an 8 to 10. It wasn't great, but it's better than the average bear for sure, with room for improvement.
Sure.
So I'm taking the courses, I'm doing this and that, and I'm realizing I don't have an analytical brain on me. I can't pass economics. I can't do accounting. Mm-hmm. Just for some reason, I couldn't do it. My dad's an accountant. I couldn't do it.
Sure.
And that was part of the courses because the professional golf management means you're going to be running a pro shop, not just give lessons.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're automatically going to be playing every Sunday on the PGA.
Sure, absolutely.
In fact,
not.
it's the absolute opposite of that.
Right.
But it gives you an opportunity to play for that if you can make it.
Absolutely.
Like my friend made. So I just said, listen, this isn't really what I want to do, but there was a broadcast program on campus, which I was very fortunate just to transfer over into that. Because I like radio, let's do radio. And then end up getting a broadcast degree from New Mexico State University. My first gig wasn't radio. It was a TV station in El Paso, and I was a photographer for the station.
Okay.
So I got to go run around the station, or the city, the lovely El Paso, Texas, and with a camera over my shoulder, interviewing people. I shot the news, I wrote the news, I edited the news. I was never on the news. But I did everything else you could do.
You did all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, I got to meet the governor, who was Bush at the time.
Right.
They flew me out to Austin for a special thing. It was really kind of a neat job.
So you weren't the pretty face behind the camera?
I was a pretty face behind the camera. It's not in front of it.
Behind the camera, right.
It's just when you're in front of it, that's someone else's judgment if you're pretty or not. I didn't like news. News was a horrible experience to the point of what you had to cover. Okay, you know how news works.
Yeah.
So, I'm right out of college. I get this gig. I graduated in December. In January, I'm working in El Paso. And the action part of the job was fun. Hey, there's a breaking news. Got to go grab the van and drive over there, get some photo, do a live shot, whatever it is. That's exciting. That's fun. But when you're going, to a house of a lady who lost her son in a hit and run,
Yeah.
And you got to go into their house and you got to light it up with the cameras and mic checker and this and that. And you hear this woman, it's just so sad, what's going on. And then, and then the next story, 5 minutes later, you're at, the zoo with the children. I mean, it's really weird,
That
up and
back
down
and
this
forth,
emotional
seesaw.
roller coaster
Yeah.
is what it is. And I never dug that. I mean, real quick, the reason why I quit this job, there was a big storm. It was a flood. It happens every 20 years. And this mom and his son got swept away, and they died. And we had to do it on site, right by the area, the live shot, right?
Right.
Mud everywhere, rain. I mean, it was a hectic thing. The video shoot went well. In fact, we all went to Applebee's right afterwards.
Great, right. The video show was great, but
but what I'm saying. That's the dichotomy of news.
Exactly.
It's like it's not. Forget the emotional stuff when you're watching news. It's not about that at all. It's not. You got to be there first. It's the job was well done.
We know the back end of media, how it works, and most people don't realize what somebody has to go through to get the story.
Right, and how much you can lose your job for not being there first.
Yeah, that's very true.
So real quick, the story went well as aesthetics go.
Right.
Two people lost their life, but here we're at Applebee's celebrating
had great shots.
Great shot, a great live, event, I guess you can say. We went out there, we did it well, everything went well.
The broadcast was fantastic.
I had to go cover it about a week later, the funeral. Okay, and I never done this before. So they wanted to do a follow-up on the story. And the reporter was with me. He goes, all right, so...
Did you ever get punched in the face?
Did I? Yeah. Well, we're getting close to this one here.
Okay, come on.
Because... so the reporter goes, all right, go in there and just get some shots. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, go in there and get some shots. I'm like, I'm green. I'm just started this.
Right.
Okay. So I get in there and I get the camera and I'm kind of getting ready to set up and everything. And this guy comes up and goes, what are you doing in here?
Yeah.
Get out of here. I mean, I can't tell you. I'm feeling crappy right now just saying that story. It was the worst feeling I ever felt as a human being. To try to get that feeling or try to get that shot in a funeral where you have no right to be. I mean, I really had no right to be at all. And to get it, I mean, I felt worse than, less than gum on a shoe. I mean, it was really a crappy feeling. And that was what turned me off. And that was what really turned me off. And I said,
where are you? What time in your life was this?
I was 24. Okay. I was probably 25 at the time. It was 2000. It was 1995.
So this is now we're after the broadcast. You're after the broadcast degree. You're
about 6 months after.
Okay,
exactly.
I was trying to keep the timeline on this.
Yeah. Graduated in 94, December, and January of 95. That's when it began. I lasted 9 months.
Right.
I stayed 9 months before I got the hell out of that place. I had to drive 45 miles each way to work anyway. I was not going to live in El Paso. That was not on my radar.
Well, so, where you started in the business, it's like, okay, you've got the film tragic events. You've got the setup shop in, at funerals.
Yeah, but you also get fun stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the fun stuff, but there is that dichotomy that. It's, I could see how that could blow your mind and turn you right off.
Especially being that age, we're like,
exactly.
The most important thing about the little micro tornado that hit the trailer park was that we weren't there first,
Right.
I mean, it's just...
That's awful.
Right, but did I ever get punched? No, I always... In fact, when I saw other reporters run for the story, I walked.
Right.
Okay? I just said, screw it. I'm not that kind of person. And I always hated tabloid. I always hated the paparazzi style thing. I'm kind of anti-authoritarian to a certain degree when it comes to, go cover that. And then I'd be like, why? You don't question your news director of what to cover. You just go cover it.
Exactly.
But I would question it because I'd be like, that's not newsworthy, but that's... The news is a whole different beast, and I wish people would stay away from watching local news. All right, I'll just say it right now. This is my personal feeling.
It's a lot of bad news.
It's a lot of bad news, and it's followed up by what a beautiful sunset here, and and then it's so it's a really bizarre. No wonder why you need Prozac to watch the news.
It's crazy.
I really recommend people not watch it because.
All right, let's get into comedy. Okay, comedy. You're
lighting this up a little.
Right. Let's go totally 180.
Yeah.
Comedy, man. Laugh Factory.
Well, let's get the comedy started a little bit later on because when I left Las Cruces area, New Mexico, and El Paso. I moved to Phoenix, and I was bartending and not getting into radio. And I finally jumped into sports radio. So I did that first. So I did sports radio. Then I ended up moving on to a sports comedy show. So the ESPN KTAR station was my hockey show.
Okay.
I did that for once a week with a Stanley Cup winner, Brent Severin from the Dallas Stars.
Nice.
He'd call up from Dallas at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I'd be here doing my show, and we'd talk hockey once a week. Hockey Night in Phoenix was the name of the show. Covered the Coyotes and have for 12 years.
Nice.
And I moved on to doing a comedy sports show with a few comedians. So I started hanging out with the comics. We're talking about the hot dog eating contest, right? And but this is at News Talk 1010, which down the hall is a AM heavy religious station. Okay,
right.
So
right.
I running everything. I'm in the control room. Like normally with your radio, there's a guy in the studio and there's a guy in the control room. Yep. No, we did the show in the control room because I had to run everything. Mm-hmm. So this reverend was in the room across from us. He's holding his Bible high in the air, doing his thing. We can't hear him, but he's doing his thing. You know what he's doing. And we're talking to a woman about how many hot dogs she can shove in her mouth. That was pretty much.
I'm getting flashes of the Howard Stern movie.
Yeah, right. It was very bizarre. So, but that got me connected with the comedians and hanging out with them. And then for a little while, I started just, I have material. I've been on the radio, and when you do radio and you're very spontaneous, jokes will come out regardless. So if you remember them, if they're stage worthy, is another story. You can use that. So would always help my friend tag their jokes.
Sure.
I always gave them great tags too. Oh, you should do that, you should do that, you should do that. And then I come up with my own stuff. And this was back around 2004, 2005, when I'm at All Comedy Radio now. I'm doing mornings. I'm interviewing Richard Lewis. I'm interviewing Dave Attell, Louis C.K. I mean, you name the biggest ones, the ones that are at the Tempe Improv, I interviewed them. And it was a wonderful year, and it was a wonderful the people meet the comedians, get to know them, get to learn them a little bit, was very influential for me because I never treated them as a comic. I treated them as a person who does comedy.
Sure.
And that's important when you're doing with radio, and they appreciate that too. They don't want to be put on, like a monkey. You don't want to, shine for me, monkey, dance for me, Frank Caliendo was the only one who actually did that. He's like, I love to do it.
So obviously getting in front of a crowd is not something you're afraid of.
Well, I was. Absolutely, man. Right. Absolutely. Because in 2008, after doing All Comedy Radio and doing my own show for a couple of years, I finally got the courage to do it. Mm-hmm. And I 5 minutes, I wrote my stuff down. I got up on stage. I didn't even hear any laughter. I didn't hear any clapping. I heard nothing.
Silence, right.
Because I was so focused on saying my 5 minutes. I didn't care about anything else. I was not in the moment. You just get up there and do it. And another thing, when you go from radio to stage, radio, you're behind the mic. No one sees you. It's great. You could be in your underwear. It doesn't matter. When you're on stage, people look at you. They're waiting for you to be funny. So that took a while for me to accept on stage, to get used to that stare.
Yeah.
And then, so, from 2008 to about 2014 maybe, even 15, I would say, it was still uncomfortable for me to be on stage.
Well, I can imagine you're constantly learning. It's,
absolutely.
new experiences.
Right.
You get advice from, I'd imagine you've met many comedians. So, getting different advice from guys that have been through more and have, have the time in the business.
You ask them during their questioning. That's how I kind of get my advice. I always kind of, try to peel a different onion layer that hasn't been peeled. Sure. Considering I've been on stage, I have that experience now. I can ask them from where I'm coming from. I had one comic actually tell me, give me some advice, though, outside of the radio. This was Dennis. What's it? He's got his brother. God, all right. Anyway, his
Miller?
Regan. Dennis Regan. You know Brian Regan. I'm sure you're familiar with that very famous comedian. It's his brother.
I know the name.
Who writes for King of Queens.
Oh, okay, yes.
And a few other comedians. A very well-known writer.
Sure.
So I had him on my show, and I couldn't find any information. This is 2005. I just couldn't find anything on him.
Right.
And so I'm like, I was lost in the interview, and I told him, hey, can you just tell a joke? And it just didn't fly well. It died right away, right? And I got nervous. What do I do? So I get a call later on that day. And mind you, I'm doing a morning show on All Comedy Radio. I get a phone call around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Hey, Kevin, this is Dennis Regan. I'm like, hey, man, what's up? He's like, hey, listen, you seem like a really cool guy, a really nice guy, but I just wanted to just throw some advice to you just so you know, just down the road. You should really never ask a comedian to tell a joke for you.
I can see that. I can see that.
But I mean, I thought it was really interesting that he would do that. You know, I thought that was very fascinating. That he took the time because I guess apparently he had a good time with me. Or at least enjoyed my company enough to do that, which means a lot. I mean, I take that as a very big lesson
for sure,
as well as a compliment as well.
The nice thing too is here's a veteran that's willing to help somebody that's newer in the industry.
Right, because All Comedy Radio, the morning gig I was doing, was pretty much my first Monday through Friday gig. I mean, it was my first, real AM, morning job show, 6 to 10. I mean, it was real. It was legit. I mean,
and since we both have been on stage a lot through our different careers, do you still find to this day, I ask everybody this, when you walk out there on stage, you have little butterflies?
Yeah, I do. But,
I think that's good.
Yeah.
That's why I asked that, because to me, if you don't have them, you've lost some of your passion for what you're doing.
Of course, because then it's this everyday thing now. It's just, I'm just going to go up on it. I get up on stage, I get the little butterflies, but I attack the stage now when I get up there. I attack it knowing that it's my stage, and they're there to listen to me. Not to say that they're there for me, but they're there to listen to someone on stage who knows what they're doing, who looks like they know what they're doing, because that's very important as well. Sure. If you're showing weak body language, then the audience is going to pick that up. Your material is probably not going to come out. So what I've learned over the last few years is telling the joke as I'm telling you the joke, as I'm telling my friend the joke. That's how I got to approach it to the crowd. That one-on-one kind of thing. I understand
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I always pick somebody on the left, somebody in the middle, and somebody way on the right, and take turns shooting at eye contact. But I wanted people in the very back because that allowed me to go over the heads of the whole audience.
And they're not going to know anyway. I mean, because they're not going to see your eyes on them.
Listen, I want to, before we only have a few minutes left, so I want to talk about going global with gas.
Yes.
This is your show that you've been doing now for what, 8 months?
Well, yeah, it kind of it started in 2015 and it ran for about a year, then the hiatus, and we brought it back again since basically the beginning of February. And it's a 2-hour show on Saturdays right here on the Voice America Variety Channel. And it's kind of my venting, It's aired out with gas, man, It's just I have 2 hours, and the first 2 hours used to be just music, independent artists, and we play games, we talk drugs, we play porn. I can explain that later, but we have a lot of fun. It's just the week in review and what have you, local music artists, and we play tunes. But now I changed that all just the first hour, and then the second hour I've changed into my other show called Aliens with Gas. It's the extraterrestrial rock show.
Nice.
And we talk aliens and UFOs and everything unknown. And it's a really fun show. It's with comedy, humor, insight. We play songs that have alien themes to them from big famous bands and even local artists. And we'll discuss more when we come back.
Absolutely. All right. Well, listen, we are going to take a break now. Thanks for listening to Finding Your Frequency. We'll be back, so follow us on social media, on Twitter at Jeff Spenard 2, at Radio Ryan 1, and check us out on Facebook at Finding Your Frequency Net. We'll be back with Alejandro Rojas in a minute. And welcome back to Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Jeff Spenard.
And I'm your guest co-host, Jon Missel.
Very nice. And we also have Mr. Kevin Gassman still with us.
Hello.
Hello. All right, coming up next, we have Mr. Alejandro Rojas. He is the host for Open Minds UFO Radio, editor and contributing writer for Open Minds Magazine and OpenMinds.tv, and MC for the International UFO Congress. He is also a blogger for the Huffington Post. For several years, Alejandro was the official spokesperson for the Mutual UFO Network as the Director of Public Education. As a UFO paranormal researcher and journalist, Alejandro has spent many hours in the field investigating anomalies, phenomena up close and personal. Alejandro has been interviewed by media organizations around the world, including the largest cable and network news agencies, with regular appearances on Coast to Coast AM. He has been featured on the Travel Channel, Sci-Fi, National Geographic, and E. Alejandro, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It's good to have you. You get a lot of accolades, a lot of good stuff going on here. I need to know a little bit of your history, my friend.
Yeah, I keep super busy. So I, in fact, do UFOs full time, essentially, with running the UFO Congress that you mentioned, and that's right here in the Phoenix area. And then at openminds.tv, we post UFO news daily.
Very cool. So how did you get? How did this all happen? Were you abducted?
How did I get into it? I was not abducted. In fact, I hadn't seen anything abnormal until many years into this. So it really was. I was kind of a skeptic. I had these two sides to me. I was in school, in high school, and when I began college, I was into math and science. But I thought this stuff was interesting. And my background is, I'm Mexican, but also with some Native American, and it was like, they believe in a lot of mysterious stuff. So I was still open to that. And so I always pondered it. I would watch the shows. But then in 2001, there was a gentleman who brought a lot of credible people with the FAA, people in the government and military, to Washington, D.C., to the National Press Club. Tons of media was there. And by this time, I had actually changed to a journalism major. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't covered. So even though there were tons of cameras, there was a little piece on CNN, and that was it. And I used to go to conferences and stuff, and I would ask the journalists, what do you think of this topic? Why don't you really cover it much? And they said, if something new and interesting happened, we would. And that was new and interesting, and it should have been covered. And at that time, it was kind of like Close Encounters with Richard Dreyfuss. I just immersed myself in all of the information and everything. And when I emerged, I joined this group, Mutual UFO Network, that is the largest in the country investigating this stuff. Luckily, the headquarters was where I lived at the time in a suburb of Denver. And I just got heavily involved. I did some field investigating. Like you mentioned, I got involved with their headquarters and became doing PR and their press person. And we got so much press. Luckily, my goal is always to interface with mainstream press or people out there who are not into UFOs.
Sure.
To bring the credible information to the people and try to answer some questions they may have. And so we had a lot of success with that. There was a lot of interest, surprisingly, even for credible information. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Sure. I got to say, even growing up, I was always, my thought process was, we're not alone in this world. How can we be the only species in a galaxy that's so big but very small for what we know, is apparently. But I've always thought, what is out there? So as a UFO and paranormal researcher, what's some of the stuff you've come across that would tell us that there is something else going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, what's interesting along those lines of what you're talking about is that when I got into this, the movie Contact was in the 90s, mm-hmm. and it was, SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is all scientists, was made fun of. They were kind of fringe. They were weird. But these days, they're so popular. NASA, when they talk about anything, it's typically about looking for life or searching for life and being on the cusp of discovering life. So there's been a real change in the paradigm and how we think of all of this. But along those lines, it really has opened up a lot of scientists and even government officials and such in the background to this topic, and they've looked more into some of the credible cases, because I have found, and you can see some of these cases on the TV shows that are out there. Some of the good ones still aren't covered, but you do find, for instance, military situations where the military really didn't know what was going on, and they kind of closed the case as an unknown. We don't know what the heck happened. And really, when you look into it, the military wasn't so black and white about this topic, and never has been. Even though publicly they say, we don't look into this stuff. We don't think there's anything to it. We stopped looking into it in 1969. You do find in the record cases that they label as UFOs that they just essentially don't ever come to a conclusion to. And then some of these people, when you're lucky, some of these military guys come out of the military and talk about those cases and their involvement with some of these situations. And of course, they're very credible, and they just leave you scratching your head thinking, what the heck did these people see? Typically, they see something, that looks like it's some sort of technology that is beyond what we would be capable of creating.
Hey, Alejandro, so, remember, like, all the military bases, you know the story about Malmstrom, right, up in Montana?
Yeah.
So we just talked about that on our show a couple weeks ago, and this is about UFO sighting on the base that actually disabled nuclear weapons.
Really?
On the base, as reported by military men. And the question is, when you discredit people for visualizing of UFO or seeing these things, you're discrediting your own military men. So are you hiring?
Absolutely.
You're either discrediting them or you're hiring crazy people.
What's the what is the cover up? I mean, Area 51. I mean, there's so much out there that is hard to dispute and should be accredited. Yet the government won't tell you anything, or you can't know that. Why is that? Why do you think they're not open?
I think it's pretty simple, because if you just put yourself in their shoes, let's say you have something happen like over a nuclear facility, and there are these cases and they do get escalated. We did a video not too long ago that people could watch, and how the government military escalates these cases and they go straight to the top. They flag them with a code word, and then they go straight to the top to be investigated, especially these ones that happen at nuclear facilities. And but think of having to tell the public something flew over a sensitive airspace we didn't know, and we don't know what it was.
Right.
You can't tell the public that. You got to either say we do know what it was, or it was something mundane. But you got to give them the idea that you have control of the situation. So I think that's simply why they would not, just outwardly say, oh yeah, these things were flying around and we didn't know what they were. Right. They might have turned off our nukes, but those silly things, and there is this sense that although there does seem to be, because a lot of the quotes you hear are, it's not of national defense concern. And there are arguments. In fact, the government of Chile, which has an official UFO investigation organization, came to the conclusion that there is a third party. There's some sort of intelligence behind these things, but it doesn't seem to be hostile. It's not hurting us. It's not overtly attacking. And you do hear this phrase of no national defense significance. And it's kind of this idea that, it's not a threat. It doesn't appear to be a threat. And a lot of people have come to that conclusion.
Sure.
Alejandro, do you think, this is John, do you think that they still keep that 50s mentality or even the early 60s mentality that if they actually disclosed all of this to the public, that the public would
freak out,
go into a panic? Because that's was always the different reasons, like when they seal certain files and they want a generation to die before because they think the newer ones will mature faster and be able to accept it more. Do you think a lot of that is those reasons?
It's really hard to say, and the reason it's hard to say is because we don't know for sure what they know. We do know that many believe in the military believe there is a phenomenon, that there is a mystery here, but we don't know beyond that what for certain they do know. Have they recovered craft? Have they recovered bodies? Do they know of situations where there just have been downed, or people have been abducted and disappeared? Do they know some of that stuff? So it all depends on what they know. A lot of people, like the rock star from Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, he feels right now that he's got some inside information. And he says he thinks that they know some pretty scary stuff. He hasn't necessarily said exactly what, but that's why they keep it secret, because it's really scary stuff. And let's say they do know. Let's say they do know that people are being picked up once in a while and they're never seen again. That's some really scary stuff, and you wouldn't necessarily want to just release that to the public. So if that's what they know, all the way from something flying around that we don't know what it is to, something taking people and then they're gone for good. Right. None of that is something that you would really want to share with the public.
I guess you're not going to spread that out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on, it's actually Kevin's co-host.
Yes.
Heidi Gadd. Heidi, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going fantastic.
What's up, Heidi?
Hi.
So let me set this up real quick. I met Heidi a couple years ago and found out she runs a page on Facebook, Extraterrestrials Among Us.
Beautiful.
And I was like, hey, we got to talk. Use my other radio show for the hours, and she was down with it. And I really dig the message we were doing with the show. And she connected me with Alejandro, and it's just a great combo. We work together really well talking about the world of UFOs.
I got a question for Heidi.
Okay.
I heard somewhere along the line, I don't remember where it was, but it seemed like it was a pretty credible type scenario. But I hear there's two types of aliens that walk among us. One is like a reptile, and the other is, I don't remember what the other one is, a gray type. But
Nordic, probably.
Okay.
I would guess.
Can you speak a little bit on that?
That's the theory.
Is it two types? I mean, what's the story?
There's actually theories that there's a lot of different kinds and species of aliens walking among us.
Okay.
Or extraterrestrials walking among us. And who's to know, Like, these are all the people that have either witnessed it or, for whatever reason, believe that what they've seen is what they've seen.
So are they just really good at hiding? Can they take the form of us humans?
You always think of Men in Black.
What's going
I always think of like the human skins of Men in Black.
Right.
I think there's a couple in my morning commute in here.
I think we have one working for us. I'm not going to tell you who, though.
Any of us could be an extraterrestrial.
Yes.
And not know it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they're saying that certain...
No, I didn't think of that.
Well, that's the thing.
Or are we all extraterrestrials? Because there's a theory that, they changed our DNA to get us to where we are right now in our evolutionary path. So are we all an extraterrestrial? I don't know.
That is the question.
I'm guessing we are. There's people on other planets.
And I want to ask Alejandro on this, too, because we did a story on Lloyd Pye, Everything You Know Is Wrong. It's all about evolution and the missing link and how there is no connection between primates and humans. And the difference of the DNA is what, Alejandro, like less than 0.5%?
It is small. However, there has been some work on Lloyd Pye's work that has kind of
discredited?
Unfortunately, there's been more analysis of the DNA, and that the DNA is definitely human. And these are people who are more friendly to the idea that it might be something else. In fact, really looking for something like that. But unfortunately, Lloyd Pye's information didn't
pass the mustard.
Indicate that. But getting back to kind of what Heidi was talking about, we all kind of make fun and make light of this idea of alien abduction. But what's interesting, and I think what the public doesn't know, there are like hundreds of thousands of people that believe that they've had these sorts of experiences. I mean, there are lots and
Hundreds
lots
of thousands.
and lots of these people. And if you come to a conference like ours, you would find that out. Now, that idea is even still a little kind of wild for me, but there are some cases of people claiming to have some sort of interaction with these sorts of entities, or even being taken aboard that are very, very credible. One of them right here in Arizona, Travis Walton, he was with a bunch of his colleagues. They were lumberjacks back in the 70s.
Yep.
They saw this craft in the forest. Travis himself got beamed, and they thought he was dead, so they took off. He was gone. There was a huge manhunt for him. He came back 5 days later. The cops started to think that his colleagues, his coworkers, killed him.
Right.
But he came back, and he has these memories of being on board this craft and stuff like this. Not like the movie. There's a movie, Fire in the Sky, about this, but something even more interesting. We got a presentation on our YouTube page for free. People could go watch and see what he says he feels actually happened. There's another case with these several guys in Maine where they saw a UFO a couple times, a big bright orb, actually. One time they saw it across the river from them. They flashed a light at it, which they immediately decided was a bad idea because this thing started coming towards them.
Yeah.
Years later, two of them, they're twins, they start to have these nightmares associated with some physical trauma that one of them had experienced. Really made this all start up again. They were regressed by a Harvard professor who was a psychologist, John Mack, and some of his colleagues, and they had similar memories of being taken aboard in these weird creatures, and there were details about the physiology of these creatures that was similar across all of their memories. There's one gentleman who didn't remember being taken aboard at any craft or anything like that, and so he's kind of doubtful of what the other guys have to say, although he's open to it. But he does remember seeing the craft. He remembers, this huge giant orb coming towards them, and he just remembers it flying away after it got close to them. So, yeah, there are these cases out there where that just are baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching Netflix a couple of weeks ago, and there was a story. I wish I could remember. My memory sucks nowadays, but I wish I could remember. But it was like this documentary, true story of this guy who is
Stan Romanek.
Oh, say it again.
Is it the Stan Romanek story?
Yes, it is. There it is. There.
Yep.
Okay. And Heidi, what do you think of that? What do you think of that documentary?
I wanted to believe that guy had really had all those experiences, but it kind of seems like he might have just made it up just to see if people were going to go for it.
Okay.
Which is disappointing to me personally.
It was entertaining to watch, except when I saw... You made that?
No, I'm in the documentary.
Oh, you are? Okay. All right.
The Alejandro Rojas.
For goodness sake, imagine that. See that? What I didn't like was the alien in the window that kind of just, floated down and floated up. I thought that was a little silly, but I really enjoyed the story itself, and I'm curious.
Yeah, that's it. The issue with Stan, unfortunately, because I knew him and his family very well, it seems like he has some videos that he took early on, and they're very credible. Multiple witnesses. In one case, others took video of this thing as it flew
that's
over
what was being said, right?
Yeah, great case. But, there's a researcher called Ben Hansen, and he has created this term legendizing for something that happens in the paranormal field, where someone has a genuine experience, they share it with people, and then they get like this following. And it's almost like a cult following. You get all of these people that are so fascinated, and you become kind of like a superstar. And that people seem to sometimes want to keep that stardom rolling, and they start to create stuff, because I've caught him in things. He's lied, and unfortunately, I think it's to keep this attention that he craves from his first genuine experiences.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. I mean, you have to sift through the BS where people's telling you their story, like Billy Woodward talking about Hollow Earth and very detailed stories, but you got to think this guy's just got a wild imagination. How far do you go to believe him? I'll take any. I'll believe you because that's what you want to tell me. Fine, but I can also say you're full of it too.
Yeah.
Now that's what I like about Alejandro and Heidi, both of us. It's like we'll call out the BS. We don't like Heidi said. We don't want it to be BS, but you have to, because otherwise you will be crazy if you believe everything.
It's got to be accredited. You can't just throw anything out there because people want show me something. Show me.
I'll tell you. This is my belief on aliens. I will believe in them until you can prove they don't exist.
There you go. There you go. I mean, again, I'll go back to saying that we're in a big galaxy. We can't be the only species, on the planet, but with aliens coming down and being a part of the planet, walking amongst us and all that. I have not seen one yet,
so
but
much about science we don't understand. Like we don't even know all of the physics, and maybe portals and time travel are actually available to higher evolved species, and that's how they're getting here.
Yeah, we can't be that total arrogance to think that we're the only living thing in a universe.
But we are.
Yeah, but we are, right? I was just going to say, but we are. Right?
No, we are. I would say there are certain factions of our society that is.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, they're the ones in control.
Agreed.
I agree,
and when it comes to science, especially space science, typically the findings we have, I mean, if you read the stories when it comes to science and the discoveries that they're having out there, or physics, like theoretical physics and some of the discoveries of particles and things, a lot of them start with, we never would have imagined this being the case.
Right.
It's just like with dark matter. We never would have imagined that the universe is actually expanding. We thought it was contracting. So we're completely baffled and cannot explain that. rogue planets that are just floating out there and they're not around suns.
Right.
They never expected anything like that. They never expected so many of the suns out there to have solar systems and planets that are in this Goldilocks zone, they call it, that are potentially habitable. I mean, every discovery, even science is making, is beyond what they could have comprehended they would have discovered.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah,
Kevin.
One more thing. Do you think if we do find intelligent life out there, will we call them ALFs? Alien life form. I mean, that's what they are. I mean, we have UFOs, we have ALFs. I mean,
we're sitting here in studio and writing little notes to each other, and
they might not like that.
Yeah,
don't call me ALF.
Once they watch the show, they might
hated that show.
Well, it gives them a bad stereotype. What you're saying?
Yeah.
That was my cousin. That was my cousin Bob. That wasn't Alf.
They love cats. They don't.
Cats
here we go.
It's nice. That's great. So, Kevin, you and Heidi host a show, of course. We started talking about going global with gas.
Yeah.
Let's elaborate on the show a little bit. We got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, real quick. Saturdays at 3 p.m. It's a 2-hour show right here on the VoiceAmerica.com Variety Channel, and we talk the week, whatever's going on in my mind, my stuff, my jokes, if I'm going to test them out on the radio, or play games, interview bands, and have them on, and interview interesting guests as well. That's pretty much going global. And then the second hour from 4 to 5 p.m., we go to aliens. Does that say pot?
Pacific time.
Oh, Pacific time.
Pot,
well, we talk pot too, by the way, because how can you not
Marijuana's
talk pot?
a hot topic, absolutely.
Well, I did marijuana radio one time. 1580 AM in Colorado Springs, the very first station to flip to all marijuana talk radio. Driving with Gas, my old radio show was on there from 10 to noon. Monday through Friday.
Is that station still doing the same?
No, they pulled the plug.
Okay.
But that explains a lot.
Hey, I left before they pulled the plug, all right?
They smoked that station.
They said, you don't have Gassman anymore? You guys are out of here. But the
that
thing
station got smoked.
But real quick, on the Aliens with Gas show, I just want to mention that, our message is important. It's not just for fun. It's not just for goofing off. It's for trying to find out the answers, at least ponder them and question authority, question the things you're told, because it's important that you need to know the truth, and being suppressed that is just going to keep the Matrix alive, and we kind of keep that. That's kind of the theme of the show.
Agreed, Alejandro. Before we go, is there a website, any information to get to you for our audience?
Definitely, openminds.tv, and there we post UFO news on a daily basis, and then there you can also find our YouTube, where we've got tons of analysis and research and cool cases there, and then ufocongress.com. where you can go see information about the International UFO Congress. It's at the Weekapaw Resort, and we sell the place out. It's just all packed full of people interested in this topic.
Excellent. Alejandro, I want to thank you for being on the show. Kevin, thank you for being on the show. Heidi, thank you. Real quick, you want to throw out your...
Aliens with Gas has 2 S's. Just search it and Google everything, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff.
Okay, good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to Finding Your Frequency today. We'll be back next week with Sharon Lecter, 23 books, New York Times #1 bestseller. Make sure you follow us on social media, on Twitter, at Jeff Spinney2, at Radio Ryan 1. Check us out on Facebook at Finding Your Frequency Net. We'll see you next week.